All right, so today I'm going to start reading the section for today, which is in the book 124 to 137. So the section's called Downstream. And so the last thing that you guys read was the section about, um, what happened between him and Beatty as they got to Montag's house. And Montag's house had been called in for books by the ladies that were visiting, the ones he read the poem to and all that, and the one lady that cried, and also his wife, Mildred, had also made a final call to have them come there. So they had a big battle, and he forced Montag to burn his own house, and then he turned the flamethrower on Beatty. So now he's on the run. Um, and so this is where I'm going to pick up where it says Faber. Faber. Another rap, a whisper, and a long waiting. Then after a minute, a small light flickered inside Faber's small house. After another pause, the back door opened. They stood looking at each other. In the half-light, Faber and Montag, as if each did not believe in the other's existence. Faber moved and put out his hand and grabbed Montag, moved him in and sat him down, and went back and stood in the door listening. The sirens were wailing off in the morning distance. He came in and shut the door. Montag said, I've been a fool all down the line. I can't stay long. I'm on my way, God knows where. At least you were a fool about the right thing, said Faber. I thought you were dead. The audio capsule I gave you. Burnt. I heard the captain talking to you and suddenly there was nothing. I almost came out looking for you. The captain's dead. He found the audio capsule. He heard your voice. He was going to trace it, so I killed him with the flamethrower. Faber sat down and did not speak for a long time. My God, how did this happen? Said Montag. It was only the other night everything was fine, and the next thing I know I'm drowning. How many times can a man go down and still be alive? I can't breathe. There's Beatty dead, and he was my friend once, and there's Millie gone. Thought she was my wife, but now I don't know. The house is all burnt. My job's gone, and myself on the run. I planted a book in a fireman's house on the way. Good Christ, the things I've done in a single week. You did what you had to do. It was coming on for a long time. Yes, I believe that. If there's nothing else, I believe. It saved itself up to happen. Could feel it for a long time. I was saving something up. I went around doing one thing and feeling another. God, it was all there. It's a wonder it didn't show on me like that. And now here I am, messing up your life too. They might follow me here. I feel alive for the first time in years, said Faber. I feel I'm doing what I should have done a long time ago. A lifetime ago. For a little while, I'm not afraid. Maybe it's because I'm doing the right thing at last. Maybe it's because I've done a rash thing and I don't want to look the coward to you. I suppose I'll have to do even more violent things, exposing myself so I won't fall down on the job and turn scared again. What are your plans? To keep running. You know the war's on. I heard. God, isn't it funny, said the old man. It seems so remote because we have our own troubles. I haven't had time to think. Montag drew out $100. I want this to stay with you. Use it any way that'll help when I'm gone. But I might be dead by noon. Use this. Faber nodded. You better head for the river if you can. Follow along it, and you could hit the old railroad lines going out to the country. Follow them. Even though it's practically everything's airborne these days, most of the tracks are abandoned, and the rails are still there rusting. I've heard there are hobo camps all across the country here and there, walking camps as they call them. And if you keep walking far enough and keep an eye peeled, they say there's old Harvard degrees on the tracks between here and Los Angeles. Most of them are wanted and hunted in the cities. They survive, I guess. There aren't many of them. And I guess the government's never considered them to be great enough danger to go in and track them down. You might hole up with them for a time and get in touch with me in St. Louis. I'm leaving on the 5 a.m. bus this morning to see a retired printer there. I'm getting out in the open myself at last. This money will be put to good use. Thanks and God bless. Do you want to sleep a few minutes? I better run. Let's check. He took Montag quickly in the bedroom and lifted a picture frame aside, revealing a television screen the size of a postal card. I always wanted something very small, something I could walk to, something I could blot out with the palm of my hand if necessary. Nothing that could shout me down, nothing monstrous big. So you see, he snapped it on. Montag, the TV said. It lit up. Montag. The name was spelled out by a voice. Guy Montag, still running. Police helicopters are up. A new mechanical hound has been brought in from another district. Montag and Faber looked at each other. Mechanical hound never fails. Never since its first use in tracking quarry has this incredible invention made a mistake. Tonight the network is proud to have the opportunity to follow the hound by camera helicopter as it starts on its way to the target. Faber poured 2 glasses of whiskey. We'll need these. They drank. No so sensitive the mechanical hound can remember and identify 10,000 odor indexes on 10,000 men without resetting. Faber trembled the least bit and looked about his house at the walls, the door, the doorknob, and the chair where Montag now sat. Montag saw the look. They both looked quickly about the house, and Montag felt his nostrils dilate. He knew that he was trying to track himself, and his nose was suddenly good enough to sense the path he had made in the air of the room, and the sweat of his hand hung from the doorknob. Invisible, but as numerous as the jewels of the chandelier. He was everywhere, in and on and about everything. He was a luminous ghost, a ghost that made breathing once more impossible. He saw Faber stop up his own breath for fear of drawing that ghost into his own body, perhaps being contaminated with the phantom exhalations and odors of a running man. The mechanical hound is now landing my helicopter at the site of the burning. And there on the small screen was the burnt house, and the crowd, and something with a sheet over it, and out of the sky, fluttering, came the helicopter like a grotesque flower. So they must have their game out, thought Montag. The circus must go on, even with the war beginning within the hour. He watched the scene, fascinated, not wanting to move. It seemed so remote and no part of him. It was a play apart and separate, wondrous to watch, not without its strange pleasure. That's all for me, he thought. That's all taking place just for me, by God. If he wished, he could linger here, in comfort, follow the entire hunt on through its swift phases, down alleys, across streets, over empty running avenues, crossing lots and playground, with pauses here or there for the necessary commercials, up other alleys to the burning house of Mr. and Mrs. Black, and so on finally to this house with Faber and himself seated, drinking with the while the electric hound snuffed down the last trail, silent as a drift of death itself, skidding to a halt outside that window there. Then if he wished, Montag might rise, walk to the window, keep eye on the TV screen, open the window, lean out, look back, see himself dramatized, described, made over, standing there, limned in the bright small television screen from outside. A drama to be watched objectively, knowing that in other parlors he was as large as life, in full color, dimensionally perfect. If he kept his eye peeled quickly, he would see himself, an instant before oblivion, being punctured for the benefit of how many civilian parlor sitters who had been awakened from sleep a few minutes ago by the frantic sirening of their living room walls to come watch the big game, the hunt, the one-man carnival. Would he have time for a speech? As the hound seized him, a view of 10 or 20 or 30 million? Mightn't he sum up his entire life the last week in one single phrase or word that would stay with him long after the hound had turned? Clenching him in metal plier jaws and trotted off in the darkness, while the camera remained stationary, watching the creature dwindle in the distance, a splendid fade-out. What could he say in a single word, a few words, that would sear up all the faces and wake them up? There, whispered Faber. Out of a helicopter glided something that was not machine, not animal, not dead, not alive, glowing with a pale green luminosity. It stood near the smoking ruins of Montag's house, and the man brought his discarded flamethrower to it. He put it down under the muzzle of the hound. There was a whirring, clicking, humming. Montag shook his head and got up and drank the rest of his drink. It's time. I'm sorry about this. About what? Me? My house? I deserve everything. Run, for God's sake. Perhaps I can delay them here. Wait, there's no use you being discovered. When I leave, burn the spread of this bed that I touched. Burn the chair in the living room and your wall incinerator. Wipe down the furniture with alcohol. Wipe the doorknobs. Burn the throw rug in the parlor. Turn the air conditioning on full in all the rooms and spray with the moth spray if you have it. Then turn on your lawn sprinklers as high as they'll go and hose off the sidewalks. With any luck at all, we can kill the trail in here anyway. Faber shook his hand. I'll tend to it. Good luck. If we're in good health, but next week or the week after, get in touch. General Delivery, St. Louis. I'm sorry there's no way I can go with you this time by earphone. It was good for both of us, but my equipment was limited. You see, I never thought I would use it. What a silly old man. No thought here. Stupid, stupid. So I have another green bullet, the right kind to put in your head. Go now. One last thing, quick. The suitcase, get it. Fill it with your dirtiest clothes. An old suit, the dirtier the better, a shirt, some old sneakers and socks. Faber was gone and back in a minute. They sealed the cardboard valise with clear tape. Keep the ancient odor of Mr. Faber in, of course, said Faber, sweating at the job. Montag doused the exterior of the valise with whiskey. I don't want that hound picking up two odors at once. May I take this whiskey? I'll need it later. Christ, I hope this works. They shook hands again and going out the door glanced at the TV. The hound was on its way, followed by hovering helicopter cameras, silently sniffing the great night wind. It was running down the first alley. Goodbye. Montag was out the door, lightly, running with a half-empty valise. Behind him he heard the lawn sprinkling system jump up, filling the dark air with rain that fell gently, and then with a steady pour all about, washing on the sidewalks and draining into the alley. He carried a few drops of this rain with him on his face. He thought he heard the old man call goodbye, but he wasn't sure. He ran very fast away from the house, down toward the river. Montag ran. He could feel the hound like autumn, come cold and dry and swift, like a wind that didn't stir grass. It didn't jar windows or disturb leaf shadows on the white sidewalks as it passed. The hound didn't touch the world. It carried its silence with it. So you could feel the silence building up a pressure behind you all across town. Montag felt the pressure rising and ran. We stopped for a breath, and on his way down to the river, to peer through dimly lit windows of vacant houses, he saw the silhouettes of people inside watching their parlor walls, and there on the walls the mechanical hound. The breath of a neon vapor spidered along, here and gone, here and gone. Now at M Terrace, Lincoln, Oak Park, and up the alley toward Faber's house. Go past, thought Montag. Don't stop, go on, don't turn in. In the parlor wall of Faber's house, with its sprinkler system pulsing in the night air, the hound paused, quivering. No, Montag held to the windowsill. This way, here. The propane needle flicked in and out, out and in. A single clear drop of the stuff of dreams fell from the needle, as it vanished from the hound's muzzle. Montag held his breath like a doubled fist in his chest. The mechanical hound turned and plunged away from Faber's house, down the alley again. Montag snapped his gaze to the sky. The helicopters were closer, a great blowing of insects to a single light source. With an effort, Montag reminded himself again that this was no fictional episode to be watched on his run to the river. It was in actuality his own chess game he was witnessing, move by move. He shouted to give himself the necessary push away from this last house, the window, and the fascinating seance that was going on there. Hell, and he was away and gone. The alley, the street, and alley, street, the smell of the river, leg out, leg down, leg out and down. 20 million Montags running, soon, if the cameras caught him. 20 million Montags running like an ancient flickery. Keystone comedy, cops, robbers, chasers to be chased, hunters and hunted. He had seen it 1,000 times. Behind him now, 20 million silently baying hounds. Ricocheted across parlors. 3 cushions shooting from the right wall to the center wall, to the left wall, gone. Right wall, center wall, left wall, gone. Montag jammed his C-shell in his ear. Police suggest the entire population in the Elm area terrace do as follows. Everyone in every house of every street open a front or a rear door to look from the windows. The fugitive cannot escape if everyone in the next minute looks from his house. Ready? Of course, why hadn't they done it before? Why in all the years hadn't this game been tried? Everyone up, everyone out. He couldn't be missed. The only man running alone in the night city, the only man proving his legs. At the count of 10 now. 1, 2, he felt the city rise. 3, he felt the city turn to its thousands of doors. 4, people sleepwalking in their hallways. 5, he felt their hands on the doorknobs. The smell of the river was cool, like a solid rain. His throat was burnt rust, and his eyes were wept dry with running. He yelled as if this yell could jet him on, fling him with the last 100 yards. 6, 7, 8! The doorknobs turned on 5,000 doors. 9! He ran out of the last row of houses on a slope leading down to a solid moving blackness. 10! The doors opened. He imagined thousands of faces peering into yards, into alleys, and into the sky. Faces hid by curtains, pale, night-frightened faces like gray animals peering from electric caves. Faces with gray, colorless eyes, gray tongues, and gray thoughts looking out through the numb flesh of the face. But he was at the river. He touched it just to be sure it was real. He waded in and stripped to the darkness to the skin, splashed his body, arms, legs, and head with the raw liquor, drank it, and snuffed some up his nose. Then he dressed in Faber's old clothes and shoes. He tossed his own clothing into the river and watched it be swept away. Then, holding the suitcase, he walked out into the river until there was no bottom, and he was swept away into the dark. He was 300 yards downstream when the hound reached the river. Overhead, the great racketing fans of the helicopters hovered. A storm of light fell upon the river, and Montag dived under the great illumination as if the sun had broken the clouds. He felt the river pull him farther on his way into darkness. The lights switched back to the land, and the helicopters swerved over the city again, as if they had picked up another trail. They were gone. The hound was gone, and now there only was the cold river and Montag floating in a sudden peacefulness, away from the city and the lights and the chase, away from everything. He felt as if he had left a stage behind and many actors. He felt as if he had left the great seance and all the murmuring ghosts. He was moving from an unreality that was frightening into a reality that was unreal because it was new. The black land slid by and he was going into the country among the hills. For the first time in a dozen years, the stars were coming out above him in great processions of wheeling fire. He saw a great juggernaut of stars form in the sky and threaten to roll over him and crush him. He floated on his back when the valise filled and sank. The river was mild and leisurely, going away from the people who ate shadows for breakfast and steam for lunch and vapors for supper. The river was very real. It held him comfortably and gave him the time at last, the leisure, to consider this month, this year, and a lifetime of years. He listened to his heart slow. His thoughts stopped rushing with his blood. He saw the moon lay low in the sky now. The moon there, and the light of the moon caused by what? By the sun, of course. And what lights the sun? Its own fire. The sun goes on day after day, burning and burning. The sun and time and burning, burning. The river bobbled him along gently, burning. The sun and every clock on the earth. It all came together, became a single thing in his mind. After a long time of floating on the land and a short time of floating in the river, he knew he must never burn again in his life. The sun burned every day, it burned time. The world rushed in a circle and turned on its axis, and time was busy burning the years and the people anyway without any help from him. So if he burned things with the firemen and the sun burned time, that meant that everything burned. One of them had to stop burning. The sun wouldn't, certainly, so it looked as if it had to be Montag and the people he had worked with until a few short hours ago. Somewhere the saving and putting away had to begin again, and someone had to do the saving and keeping, one way or another, in books and records and people's heads, any way at all, so long as it was safe, free from moths, silverfish, rust and dry rot, and men with matches. The world was full of burning of all types and sizes. Now the guild of the asbestos weaver must open every shop very soon. He felt his heel bump land, touch pebbles and rocks, scrape sand. The river had moved him toward shore. He looked in at the great black creature without eyes or legs, without shape. It was only a size that went 1,000 miles, without wanting to stop, with its grass hills and forests that were waiting for him. He hesitated to leave the comforting flow of the water. He expected the hound there. Suddenly the trees might blow under a great wind of helicopters. But there was only the normal autumn wind high up, going by like another river. Why wasn't the hound running? Why had the search veered inland? Montag listened. Nothing, nothing. Milly, he thought, all this country here, listen to it, nothing and nothing. So much silence. Milly, I wonder how you take it. Will you shout, shut up, Milly, Milly? and he was sad. Lily was not here, and the hound was not here, but the dry smell of hay blowing from some distant field put Montague on the land. He remembered a farm he visited when he was very young, one of the rare few times he discovered that somewhere behind the seven walls of unreality, beyond the walls of parlors, and beyond the tin moat of the city, cows chewed grass and pigs sat in warm ponds at noon, and dogs barked after white sheep on a hill. Now the dry smell of hay, the motion of the waters, made him think of sleeping in fresh hay, in a lonely barn away from the loud highways, behind a quiet farmhouse, and under an ancient windmill that whirred like the sound of passing years overhead. He lay in the high barn loft all night, listening to distant animals and insects and trees, and little motions and stirrings. During the night, he thought, below the loft, he would hear a sound like feet moving, perhaps. He would tense and sit up. The sound would move away. He would lie back and look out the loft window, very late in the night, and see the lights go out of the farmhouse itself, until a very young and beautiful woman would sit in an unlit window, braiding her hair. It would be hard to see her, but her face would be like the face of a girl so long ago and is past now, so very long ago. The girl who had known the weather and never burned by the fireflies, a girl had known that what dandelion meant rubbed off on your chin. Then she would be gone from the warm window, and appear again upstairs in her moon-whitened room. And then, to the sound of death, the sound of jets, cutting to the sky in two black pieces beyond the horizon, he would lie in the loft, hidden and safe, watching the strange new stars over the rim of the earth, fleeing from the soft color of dawn. In the morning he would not have needed sleep, for all the warm odors and sights of a complete country night would have rested and slept him, while his eyes were wide and his mouth, when though he thought to test it, was half a smile. There at the bottom of the hayloft stair, waiting for him, would be the incredible thing. He would step carefully down, and in the pink light of the early morning, so fully aware of the world that he would be afraid, and stand over the small miracle, and at last bend to touch it. A cool glass of fresh milk, and a few apples and pears laid at the foot of the steps. This is all he wanted now. Some sign that the immense world would accept him and give them the long time he needed to think all the things that must be thought. A glass of milk, an apple, a pear. He stepped from the river. The land rushed at him, a tidal wave. He was crushed by darkness and the look of the country and the million odors on a wind that iced his body. He fell back under the breaking curve of darkness and sound and smell, his ears roaring. He whirled. The stars poured over his sight like flaming meteors. He wanted to plunge in the river again and let him idle him safely on down somewhere. This dark land rising was like that day in his childhood swimming, when from nowhere the largest wave in the history of remembering slammed him down in salt mud and green darkness. Water burning mouth and nose, retching his stomach, screaming. Too much water, too much land. Out of the black wall before him, a whisper, a shape. And the shape, two eyes. The night looked at him, the forest seeing him. The hound. After all the running and rushing and sweating it out, half drowning to come this far, work this hard, think yourself safe with a sigh of relief to come out on the land only to find the hound? Montague gave one last agonized shout, as if this were too much for any man. The shape exploded away, the eyes vanished. The leaf piles flew up in a dry shower. Montague was alone in the wilderness. Okay, that is the end of our reading for today. So answer all of these questions along the way here, and then make sure you have your summary for today's section. And there is one more section to finish out the book. It is entitled Rebirth, so that will be the reading for tomorrow. So that is it for today, and I hope you enjoy the end of the book.